After we have given an overview on how mainstream Christianity related to those Christians who refused to follow the traditions, but they wanted to stick to the biblical message, we have to ask the question, how did Islam react to that? Is there any reaction? Is there any application to what the Quran says about two groups of Christians? Those who follow the Bible and those who don't. From the very beginning, at the time of Muhammad, we have historical examples of how Islam related to Christianity. Muhammad himself advised some Muslims in the year 615 to flee the persecution of the polytheists in Mecca and to seek refuge in the kingdom of Ethiopia, who was a Christian kingdom at that time. So Muslims would go as refugees to a Christian country. In 630, a bit later, we have a case where Muhammad invited the Christian from Abba as-Saud to celebrate Easter, so Passover, in the mosque of Medina. And wherever in history Christians were oppressed for any reason, Muhammad and his followers would grant them refuge. A very well-known example of differentiation between two groups of Christians is found in the book of the Patriarchs and Prophets, this huge story that Tabari wrote about the whole history of Islam. In this book, we have the story of Abu Bakr, who was the first caliph after Muhammad. Abu Bakr went to Egypt to conquer the country. And as soon as he established his position, he sent a letter to his army leader. His name was Osama ibn Zayd. In the letter, this is what Abu Bakr says: "Don't kill women, older people, and children. Do not burn date palms. Do not cut down fruit trees. Do not slaughter a goat, a cow, or a camel, only for consumption." And now it comes. "You will find people who have renounced the world and retired to a monastery. Leave them in peace." A tradition, a hadith attributed to Malik ibn Abbas, reflects the same spirit as the continuation of this instruction. In this hadith, Abu Bakr advised Yazid, "You will find people who claim to have given themselves to Allah. Leave them to what they claim to have given themselves. You will find people who have shaved the middle of their heads. Strike what they have shaved with the sword." The religious people who lived retired in monasteries were the so-called Nestorian Christians. We'll talk later about the Nestorians. Actually, this is the name of those Christians in the time of Justinian who refused to follow the mainstream theology of Mary, Mother of God, and had to leave the Byzantine Empire and went to Arabia, to the Middle East, under the name of Nestorians. Abu Bakr tell his commander, Osama ibn Yazid, to spare these people, not to touch them. So when the dominant religion hated the Christian minorities, Islam would protect them. And we have many examples of that throughout history. One of the newest examples is in the 20th century, during the Pakistani or Indo-Pakistani War, actually, that's the way we call it, a conflict that followed the independence from the British Empire in 1947, 1948. In Pakistan, thousands of Hindus and Sikhs were killed by Muslims, and vice versa, by the way. But the Christians, who actually should have been subject to retaliation because they were following the religion of the colonialist power, the Christians were saved from the purge. I quote somebody here who writes, as late as 1948, a Pakistani general went back into history and pulled out that same command, the command given by Abu Bakr to Osama bin Yazid, and recited to his troops in Pakistan to make a difference when they came to churches as to what they destroyed and what were places of appropriate refuge for the people they were fighting. So that's one example. But let's start from the beginning with the so-called Covenant of Mohammed. This is a document we find today in the Library of St. Catherine in Egypt. Many question the authenticity of this document and say, well, that's a fake. It's possible, I don't know. But what is sure is that for centuries, this document has regulated the relationship between Muslims and Christians. So what does this document say? The Covenant of Mohammed. Let's read what the messenger Muhammad wrote to all the people as a trust on the part of Allah to his creatures. So Muhammad refers to Allah. What he says now is a command given to him by Allah that is given to all creatures. I quote, "Whenever Christian monks, devotees and pilgrims gather together, verily we are at the back of them and shall protect them, their properties and their morals, by myself, by my friends, and by my assistants, for they are my subjects and under my protection. I shall exempt them from what may disturb them, of the burdens paid by others on the oath of allegiance. They must not give anything of their income, but that which pleases them. They must not be offended, disturbed, coerced, or compelled. Their judges should not be changed or prevented from accomplishing their offices, nor should the monks be disturbed in exercising their religious order, or should the people of seclusion be stopped from dwelling in their cells. No one is allowed to plunder these Christians, destroy or spoil any of their churches and houses of worship, or take any of the things contained within these houses. He who takes away something from them has corrupted the oath of God and, in truth, disobeyed his messenger. The jizya," we're going to talk later on about the jizya, what it is. "The jizya should not be put upon their judges, monks, and those whose occupation is the worship of God. Nor is any other thing to be taken from them, whether it be a fine, a taxation, or any unjust right. Verily, I shall keep their compact wherever they may be, in the sea or on the land, in the east or west, in the north or south, for they are under my protection, and the testament of my safety against all things which they abhor. No tax or tithe should be received from those who devote themselves to worship God in the mountains, or from those who cultivate the holy lands. No one has the right to interfere with their affairs or bring any action against them. Do not dispute or argue with them, but deal according to the verse recorded in the Quran. If you argue with the people of the book, do it most courteously." Al-Ankabut 46. "Thus they will live favored and protected from everything which may offend them by the colors to religion, Islam, wherever they may be and in any place they may dwell." And finally, "They must not be forced to carry arms or stones, but Muslims might protect them and defend them against others. It's positively incumbent among every one of the followers of Islam not to contradict or disobey this oath until the day of resurrection and the end of the world." So Muslims have referred to this document for centuries as an authoritative document. And that's why it has significantly contributed to an attitude of openness. We could take a lot of examples. In Egypt, while Egypt was a province of the Ottoman Empire from 1517 to 1789, the Pasha annually reaffirmed this pledge of protection of Christians based on this Testament of Muhammad. So practically over 1,000 years after this document, the Pasha still refers to it. And somebody said that while it was virtually impossible for Muslims to trade and reside in most Christian lands, European Christians could live in many Islamic societies as people of the book. History records the existence of several non-Muslim treaties with Muslims. where the rights and duties of all these people are regulated. We have some examples during the life of Muhammad in the city of Tabuk, for example, close to the border of today's Jordan, and we said that those Christians who decided not to become Muslims would just have to pay 1 dinar, 1 coin per inhabitant to the Muslim dignitaries in exchange for their freedom. Well, the same when Muhammad sent Khalid ibn Walid to the Christians of Najran to invite them to embrace Islam, and they said no. Well, neither Muhammad nor Khalid forced them to anything except paying something. And what is it something? This is what we call the jizya. So jizya is not a punishment. The jizya is a tax, a poll tax if you want, for non-Muslims. Now there are 2 things to say about the poll tax called jizya. First, it's higher than what Muslims had to pay as taxes. Well, we might say that that's not fair. That's true, but it had the advantage that Muslims were not interested in having non-Muslims become Muslims because they would lose money in that case. The second thing is that in return to this tax, non-Muslims were exempted of many things like military service, and they were under the protection of the Muslim majority. So it was a kind of win-win situation for everyone. And by the way, non-Muslims were quite happy about this tax because it was still lower than the taxes they would have to pay under Byzantine regulations. So even today in Turkey, the churches don't need to pay electricity and water. I've been working in Turkey myself, so I know that. Because of those old rules that the covenant of Muhammad exempts all religious persons from any tax and any coercion. And I think there must have been some negative aspects of cohabitation between Muslim and Christian. There's no question on that. Not everything is positive. But at least I could give you some examples based on a document that Muslims did not force non-Muslims to embrace Islam. On the contrary, they respected them, they protected them. According to the system, if we are in good relationship, everybody profits from that a kind of win-win situation. I wish that Islam today will remember that when it has been forgotten. In some situations where Christians are suffering in Muslim countries. I wish that what Muhammad said, or allegedly said, would be implied today in all societies. And I wish that Christians would be grateful for what Islam has done in the Middle Age. We are going to talk more about this later on, but again, thank you for listening, and if you have questions or commentaries, go ahead. I know there's many things we could add to that, but I don't want to make it too long, so post your questions and I'll do my best to give you material on that if you wish. Thank you very much.